page 21 to 24. Cuckoo, Cheating by Nature, by Nick Davies. Chapter 1. A Cuckoo in the Nest. 1.4. Only 42% of cuckoo species are parasitic. In 1859, these quaint views, of bad cuckoo design and host benevolence, were swept away forever by Charles Darwin. In Chapter 8 of The Origin of Species, he discusses the parasitic habits of the common cuckoo as a prime example of how behavior can evolve by natural selection. Darwin knew that some species of American cuckoos are not parasitic, but have normal parental behavior. They build their own nests, incubate their eggs and raise their young to independence just like most birds. Back in 1794, this had been a source of pride for Charles Willson Peale, who created the Philadelphia Museum with admission tickets bearing the slogan "The birds and beasts will teach thee." He contrasted cuckoos from the Old World, notorious symbols of infidelity for their practice of planting their eggs in the nests of other birds, with cuckoos from America, with their admirable family values, and he was proud to believe that they are faithful and constant to each other. However, Darwin learned from his correspondents that these parental cuckoos were not so virtuous after all and occasionally laid eggs in the nests of other species. He then proposed this evolutionary sequence. Now let us suppose that the ancient progenitor of our European cuckoo had the habits of the American cuckoo, and that she occasionally laid an egg in another bird's nest. If the old bird profited by this occasional habit through being enabled to migrate earlier or through any other cause, or if the young were made more vigorous by advantage being taken of the mistaken instinct of another species than when reared by their own mother, encumbered as she could hardly fail to be by having eggs and young of different ages at the same time, then the old birds or the fostered young would gain an advantage. An analogy would lead us to believe that the young thus reared would be apt to follow by inheritance the occasional and aberrant habit of their mother, and in their turn would be apt to lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and thus be more successful in rearing their young. By a continued process of this nature, I believe that the strange instinct of our cuckoo has been generated. This paragraph still dazzles me with its originality, and even today biologists are busy investigating its three main suggestions. Darwin's first point is that far from being defective behavior, parasitic laying can be a positive advantage and bring better reproductive success than parental care. Relieved of the time and energy commitment of parental duties, a parasitic adult could indeed migrate earlier, but more importantly, we might add, it could use the saved resources to lay more eggs per season. In fact, we now know that parasitic cuckoos are especially prolific in their laying. A parental cuckoo might have time to raise at most 2 clutches in a season, each of 3 eggs. The parasitic common cuckoo, laying 1 egg in each host nest, lays an average of 8 eggs per season, while many individuals lay 15 or more, and the maximum recorded from one female is 25. Similarly, another parasitic bird in North America, the brown-headed cowbird, can lay 40 eggs or more per season, compared with 2 clutches of 4 for a typical parental species in the same family of American blackbirds. Furthermore, as Darwin points out, common cuckoo chicks are raised alone in the host nest and so escape competition for food. Perhaps they grow better than they would if reared in a brood by their own parents. Far from being defective, therefore, parasitic laying seems positively advantageous. So the worry of Gilbert White and Edward Jenner should really be turned on its head. Why haven't more species become parasitic, to exploit the workforce of so many honest parental species? According to the latest estimate, there are about 10,000 species of birds in the world. Precise estimates vary depending on how full species are separated from subspecies, exactly the kind of uncertainty predicted by evolutionary change, because divergence between species is a gradual process, not a sudden event. Of these, 102 species are obligate brood parasites, that is to say, They always lay eggs in the nests of other species and rely on these as hosts to incubate their eggs and raise their young. The parasites comprise 59 species of parasitic cuckoos, Cuculidae, 5 species of parasitic cowbirds, Icteridae, 17 species of honeyguts, Indicatoridae, 20 species of African parasitic finches, Astrolidae, and 1 duck, the black-headed duck from South America. Clearly, success as a parasite depends on a good supply of host species. But if, as Darwin suggests, brood parasitism is so advantageous, why have only 1% of all bird species evolved this lifestyle? Darwin's second suggestion is that parasitic laying evolved gradually from parental ancestry. He had no direct evidence and simply argued that it was plausible for occasional parasitic behavior to evolve, by stages, into full-time parasitism. However, we now know that this conjecture is correct. In 2005, Michael Sorensen and Robert Payne constructed a family tree for the 141 species of cuckoo in the world, family Cuculidae, based on similarities in their DNA. Only 42% of cuckoo species are parasitic, 59 species, the other 58%, 82 species, are parental species. The tree shows clearly that within the cuckoo family parasitic laying has evolved independently 3 times from parental ancestry, once in South American cuckoos, 3 related species in the genera Tapra and Drymacoccix, once in the crested cuckoos of Eurasia and Africa, 4 species in the genus Chlamyder, and once in another large group of parasites, 52 species in 11 related genera, including our common cuckoo in the genus Cuculus. Darwin's third point is the one that has fascinated me for the last 30 years. It's that hosts don't raise cuckoos through benevolence, of course. How could they? Any reed warbler that spent its time preferring to raise cuckoos instead of its own young would fail to pass on those generous instincts to future generations. On the other hand, a reed warbler that refused to raise cuckoos and focused on raising its own young would pass on its selfish instincts to those offspring, so the selfish raising of one's own young, or other genetic relatives, should be the habit we'd most expect to see throughout nature. And indeed it is. Darwin's idea to explain acceptance of a cuckoo chick is simply that the hosts get tricked, or follow what he calls a mistaken instinct. Wonderful and admirable as most instincts are, he wrote, yet they cannot be considered as absolutely perfect. There is a constant struggle going on throughout nature between the instinct of the one to escape its enemy and of the other to secure its prey. Darwin likened the natural world to an entangled bank, where each species was forever evolving new defenses or new tricks to combat its ever-changing competitors and enemies. In theory, then, we should expect there to be what Richard Dawkins and John Krebs have termed an evolutionary arms race between cuckoos and hosts. In response to parasitism by cuckoos, hosts should evolve defenses, such as protecting their nests against laying cuckoos, and rejecting cuckoo eggs and cuckoo chicks. In turn, this would lead to the evolution of better trickery by cuckoos to beat host defenses. Better cuckoo trickery would then favor the evolution of even better host defense, leading to further improvements in cuckoo trickery, further improvements in host defenses, and so on. In other words, hosts and cuckoos should co-evolve, with changes in either party selecting for changes in the other party. Are cuckoos and host evolving together in such an arms race? Page 24.